It's been such an amazing privilege to work on this exhibition here at the Coal Mining Museum and to be really able to showcase the amazing wealth of work that they've got to offer here. My name is Jasmine White and I am the curator of this new exhibition at the National Coal Mining Museum for England. The exhibition is called From the Earth Comes Light: Women, Creativity and Mining in 20th Century Britain. It's basically born out of my own frustrations with the ways that coal mining communities and industrial communities more generally are often depicted in British culture. They're often quite grey and depressing and very, very, very masculine. I knew from my own experience that there are other ways to tell those stories and that women are really, really important to those communities. Women are also very, very, very creative forces in those communities, which is something we really wanted to bring out in this show. One of the things that I think is so valuable about this exhibition is that we're really bringing together a really broad range of both materials and artists. So we've got artists from all kinds of different backgrounds all over the country as well. We've got all different kinds of mediums represented in the show, lots of photography, painting of course, but we've also got archival pieces, photo albums, letters, that kind of thing. So it's really about putting kind of more formal art objects into conversation with the everyday creativities of working class women. So the work that is behind me at the moment is gathered under the loose theme that we've called Histories from Below. So it's basically about thinking about women artists who have actually depicted underground life, actually depicting the pit itself, which is more common than you might think. One of my favourites that I really wanted to mention is Constance Stubbs' Pit Props from 1992. I love this work partly just because it's kind of so visually striking and quite different to anything else in the exhibition. I also love it because it really embraces a certain level of abstraction. It's not interested in realism or depicting things as they were, but it's interested in really getting at a feeling and a kind of sense of ambiguity, which was, I think, really prevalent at the time that Stubbs was working. It thinks about the place of the coal miner in society in 1992, and it also thinks about the place of youth and the future. I think it's a really, really amazing work, and I think it's very unlike anything else in the exhibition. One of the things that we really wanted to do with this exhibition was bringing more conventional, formal art objects sort of into conversation with pieces from the archive, like the one that you can see behind me here. So this is some material from the Coal Queens competition, which ran right the way through the 20th century, right up until the 1980s. It's really, really fascinating. I was so thrilled that we could include this material, and not just because I love this Babycham poster and I kind of want a copy of it for my own house. The Coal Queen competition is utterly fascinating, partly because, of course, it's slightly been kind of dismissed in recent years. There are obviously very kind of patriarchal, misogynistic elements to competitions like these, but in my work I'm interested in how we can sort of do more than that and look at more than that and treat these women on their own terms. Think about how these women were using the resources available to them creatively to travel the world, take opportunities, win money and sell fashion in new ways. And I'm interested in how we can really kind of give these women themselves the attention and the critical attention that I think they deserve. I also really like that these pieces kind of come into conversation with the painting next to them, which is called The Law Intervenes by Judy Lee. We've included that because it's sort of more of a satirical piece, and I'm interested in how we can pay tribute to how the history of kind of working class women, working class femininity in Britain is one that's really enmeshed with the history of comedy and satire and having a laugh. So this section is called Taking Pleasure. It really comes from this idea that depictions of industrial communities and working class communities are often really dominated by struggle and dullness. People from working class communities themselves often know that that's only actually part of the story, and that's one of the things we're really interested in exploring. So in my work, I'm especially interested in working class femininity, self-fashioning, glamour, pleasure, all these things that really came to fruition in new ways in the 20th century. And some of the material that we're bringing together here really celebrates that. So we've got 2 photographs from Circa Lisa Kontanen from a series called Step by Step, which explored dance schools in North Shields in the 1980s and actually was one of the key inspirations for Billy Elliot, which some people might not know. And then we've also got 2 photographs from Keith Pattinson, quite famous photographs, really iconic, one of which we've been lucky enough to use on the posters for this show. It shows a kind of real celebration of joy, pleasure, release, these women kind of coming together at the end of struggle and really celebrating themselves and their community. So this section is called Eyes Above Ground. It basically comes from thinking, well, of course there are no deep mines that are still operational in Britain, but these communities are still there and their kind of social force is something that we do really need to think about. So we've tried to think about art that really interrogates the social force of mining and the community. A really good example of that is Betty Miller's My Village, which we've only been able to include a few pieces from in this exhibition, but the fuller work is absolutely huge. Betty Miller effectively rendered the kind of mining community of her childhood in these beautiful bronze sculptures. She was apparently inspired by Barbara Hepworth, but what's so amazing about them is that she sort of elevates these figures from her community, the gossip, the old biddy, and kind of gives them the grandeur of a Hepworth. They're also really funny and yeah, definitely worth a look at. So this section is called Creativity and Struggle, and it's basically about celebrating the fact that creativity for some of the women that we're talking about here wasn't just a privilege, it was actually a necessity. So for instance, we're really interested in celebrating the history of women against pit closures. Many of the strategies that they employed were immensely creative, from picket poetry to jumble sales. Behind me here we've got this beautiful Daughters of Mother Jones banner made by the Durham banner makers in 2017. I really like this piece and I'm so glad we've been able to include it because it's really testament to the fact that these women actually carried on fighting, carried on struggling, carried on campaigning all throughout their lives, and some of them still are today. It's really beautiful because it includes many of the women that were most important in the Barnsley circle, from Anne Scargill, Betty Cook and many others. This section is called Post-Industrial Imaginings, and it's basically trying to make the point that coal mining isn't just a historic issue. These communities are still there and there are still really important questions surrounding them. I think that some of the work that we're bringing together in this show can actually help us to answer those questions. We've got some really beautiful photos from David Seven looking at the role of women in deindustrialised communities. We've got some beautiful prints from Hayley Perry that actually use coal in the process of making the work. And then we've got this film, The Scar, which was made by the Amber Collective in 1997. The Scar was actually made in real kind of intense collaboration with the women in that community, which is one of the reasons I think it's so valuable. It also reminds us that women in deindustrialised communities are much more likely to be materially disadvantaged and have less access to creative opportunities. So this section is called Early Innovators, and it's really about kind of drilling back into that much earlier history of women and coal mining. It starts by thinking about the 1842 Act, which banned women from working underground. Some of them continued, they dressed up as men, they did it illegally, but many others adapted to work on the surface. They became known as the pit brow lasses, which is what we're really interested in here. The interesting thing about the pit brow lasses was how they were framed and how they were seen. It was very sensationalist. They were often on postcards, that kind of thing. But we've got some work in the exhibition here that really sort of challenges that perception and takes a much softer, much more empathetic look at these women who, in fact, were often very resilient and adopting quite creative strategies. It's been such an amazing privilege to work on this exhibition here at the Coal Mining Museum and to be really able to showcase the amazing wealth of work that they've got to offer here. I really think that anyone with an interest in art, politics, culture should come down and see what we've got to offer. I hope that people will come and hear the stories that we've got to tell and see the wealth of work that we've put together and come away thinking that women from coal mining communities are complex, creative, and really, really worth our attention.